Okay, so section 2 here is going to be the continuation from before where I did the supplements for the cat. But this time I'm going to do a much more complicated set of supplements. This is for a child. I'm going to call this child Charles. That's not his real name, but we're going to call him Charles, and we're going to go through the procedure for a child, and I'll just talk you through each step, and I'll actually do it right here. So first we're going to start by looking at his supplement schedule. See if I can get this oriented well for you. Okay, so he's supposed to be taking SBF a half in the morning and a half at night, Limcomin a half in the morning and a full one at night, TMG a full one in the morning, Paramin a full one in the morning, half at night. This is the fish oil EPA DHA. It's 1 in the morning, GB3 half in the morning, half at night, kelp half in the morning, half at night, vitamin D a whole capsule per week. So first of all, what I'm going to suggest, because of what I know about these supplements, is that we do not put into our formula, our powder, the fish oil, obviously because it's a liquid, that would be a mess, or the GB3, or the vitamin D. The vitamin D, because it's only 1 capsule per week, and in the case of this particular child, he can actually swallow capsules. It's just that it's difficult, and so we want to cut down on the amount of capsules that he has to swallow. But I'm going to say, okay, he's going to have to swallow 1 of these EPA DHAs in the morning, as well as his half of a GB3. And the reason there is that GB3 really does not taste good, but here's a suggestion I have for you. Buy empty capsules, okay? You can get them just about any health food store. And after you break your GB3 in half, push it inside of an empty capsule, because then even if the child is struggling somewhat to get it, swallow it, it's not dissolving in their mouth, which it can leave kind of an unpleasant taste with the GB3. So basically I'm advocating just like encapsulating your GB3 after you cut it in half, by sticking it inside of an empty capsule and closing that up. Makes it a little bit easier. So yeah, so 1, 2, 3 of them I would simply leave out of your powder formula, okay? But then that is not, this is only 1 per week. And then yes, these, they're going to have like a little tiny bit to swallow at breakfast, these 2, and at dinner that 1, okay? All right, so this is our formula, and what I would suggest, if I were the parent, I would not want to have to go through this process too many times. So really, realistically, you could make 2 weeks worth. Okay, so that would be 14 times however many days that you're going to make at a time. Okay, figure that out. So in the beginning, I would say don't do 14 in case you make a mistake. Get good at it first. Okay. I'm gonna do a batch of 6 days worth here, or I'm gonna at least do a kind of a demonstration of that. So because of the way that it differs, where it's SBF a half and a half, but Limcomin is a half and then it's a whole, I'm not gonna throw the whole day's batch all together. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do 6 days worth of breakfast, okay? And then we have to do dinner separately because there's supposed to be a lot more Limcomin, for example, okay? And there's a little bit less Paramin. The ratios are a little different, okay? So we're going to do them separate, a whole bunch of breakfasts, a whole bunch of dinners, okay? So if we're just doing breakfast, that means we've got to choose our multiple. I'm choosing 6 as, a good batch to begin with. And it's easy to multiply by a half, okay? So what you want to do is work it out. Okay, choose your multiple. I said 6. Take your multiple and multiply it by each quantity. In other words, if I'm choosing the breakfast, okay, it's a half of an SBF, so 6 times a half for the SBF, 6 times a half for the Limcomin, okay, 6 times 1 for the TMG. So hopefully this is, This is really, you know, it's a elementary math, but like I've worked it out a bazillion times. And, you know, the first time or two, you're kind of like, am I doing this right? Yeah, okay. Make sure you're doing it right, because you don't want to waste this stuff. Have somebody check you if you're worried about it. So this is what we need is, so 6 times a half is obviously 3. 3, so I'm going to have 3 SBFs, 3 Limcomans, 6 TMG, 6 Paramin, 3 Kelp. Okay, so I want to pull all that out and throw it in a pile, right? Okay, so I've got everything sitting here. Here's my SBF. I want 3 of those. And I'm going to use the grinder this time. So there we go. Open up the grinder. There's my 3 SBF. I want to take 3 Limcomin. 1, 2, 3. And I want 6 TMG. 2, 3. Okay. 6 TMGs. And 6 Paramin. There we go. And 3 Kelp. 1, 2, 3 Kelp. The Kelp I could almost leave out also just because of the taste factor, but then we start getting into, okay, you still have a lot of pills to swallow. So I think the Kelp, you know, probably could be dealt with by the flavor of something pretty strong flavored. Strong, maybe a little bit sweet, going outside of the recommendations just to be able to get it down. I have one client who says she puts her son's supplements into a smoothie. You know, I mean, sometimes you do have to compromise like that. So here's the grinder. We're going to take all these. Obviously the Kelp, it's in a capsule, so we're not going to put the capsule whole thing in there, or we're going to have a mess. The capsule can wait until later and be opened up and then thrown in, but we're going to put in all of the tablets. Okay, and there's a little bit of a trick with this grinder. If I just hold this upright like this and I try to turn on the grinder, it'll jam. So what I have learned to do is hold it like this so that your hard lumps in there that you're trying to grind up are down at the bottom, and turn it on, and then get it kind of gradually started. So I'm going to demonstrate. So I've got it turned on. Unfortunately, my grinder is actually kind of leaking. They will start to do that, at least this brand does, after a while. The powder just kind of falls out the bottom of it. I'm not sure. I guess there's a little design flaw there. But so I'm going to scoop that up here with a card. Okay, but basically I'm close to being completely ground up. I have to hold it until I don't hear too much more noise. Okay, we did it. So, let's see if I can set this down. So this is our powder. As you can see, there's a fair bit here, okay? And keep referring back to, you know, what you're doing as you go through this process. What are we doing? We're making 6 times the amount that the child is supposed to have for breakfast. Dumping it into a larger container might make this a little easier, because now we're going to add the remaining encapsulated stuff that didn't go in, because we don't need to grind the capsules. It's already a powder. We just open it up and throw it in. So I'm adding the 3 kelp. Okay. And then we want to make sure it's homogenized, you know, well mixed, because we want to be getting the proper amount of each thing. I believe this is mostly from the earlier batch. Yeah, it looks like it was. Okay, so this is 6 breakfasts worth. So now we have to measure. How do we know the correct quantity to give? We have to figure out how much. We have to essentially divide this into 6 quantities. So we have to figure out how much do we have here all told. Okay. I could measure with a 1/4 teaspoon. That's probably going to take an awfully long time. So I'm going to hop up, because I forgot to bring something, you know, bigger. I'm going to grab a full teaspoon. In fact, to make this easier and quicker, you just need to know a couple basic facts. Not everybody knows these things, because not everybody does a lot of cooking or has a reason to know, but we go by tablespoon measures and teaspoon measures for smaller quantities. And it's helpful to know that there are 3 teaspoons in 1 tablespoon. So I could cut out a lot of extra time just by starting with my tablespoon. And I'm going to suggest that you're careful that you measure the correct way, which is flat across the top. You know, don't pack it, don't tap it, none of that, but just have it be flat across the top, using, like I'm using a card to scrape across the top, so I don't have a rounded tablespoon. I just have a 1 full complete tablespoon. So I'm going to dump it into my spare container. So far, that's a full tablespoon. I think I'm going to get I might get a whole 2nd tablespoon out of here. I'm going to get close to that. So let me see how close I am. It is a little bit shy. So basically, it's probably about a 1/2 teaspoon shy of 2 full tablespoons. I'm going to test that by taking a 1/4 teaspoon twice and adding it to see what happens, to see if, and indeed that's true. Yes. So the total quantity of powder turned out to be very nearly 2 tablespoons. Now, if we want to go ballpark, and sometimes that's really not so bad, we just say, yeah, it was 2 tablespoons, but a little shy. Well, how many teaspoons is that? 6. Well, that's really handy, because we know we just did 6 days, right, of breakfast supplements. That's what's in this powder. So since it's equal to 6 teaspoons, but a little shy of a full teaspoon, we know that each time this child has their breakfast, they need a teaspoon of this powder mixed into some food, and you know, eaten. Okay, so I'm going to taste the powder and see how bad it tastes, right? I don't think it's going to be bad. No, it's not bad. Not, the kelp isn't even bothersome. I would bet that you could actually throw your vitamin D and your GB3 in there and it wouldn't be too bad, but I'll tell you what, of the two, the GB3 would be the one I'd be watchful of because it does have a very strong taste. So each time that child has a meal, you get a teaspoon worth of this powder. Go just a little bit shy, don't give them the whole teaspoon because as we saw it was a little short. Find some yummy food, yogurt with some jam in it maybe, so it kind of covers the taste. Pour this in there, and don't make it a lot of food. Maybe have it be just like 2 tablespoons of jam, or excuse me, of yogurt with a little bit of jam, for example, because it's a lot easier to get down your throat a couple spoons full than it is like a whole big batch of something. And it means that the treat food that you enclose this in is not a large portion of the meal, okay? So something like yogurt, something like almond butter, maybe applesauce, maybe a smoothie if you can make the smoothie so that it's not like a large quantity of whatever you decide to make it out of. All of those would be appropriate foods to mix it in. This is also something that we suggest for elderly people, or really anyone who has difficulty swallowing pills. And I've actually met, a number of adults who've said to me that they have difficulty swallowing pills. So this is perfectly, usable for anyone that wants to do it this way. And then, of course, you do need to remember to add your remaining supplements at the beginning of that meal. But there you have it. That's the whole thing. There's a little bit of math, but once you work it out once or twice, you really, you don't even have to think about it. You just work off your recipe. I have a whole booklet here full of recipes, like for times that I've done various things very similar to this, because at one time I had to make my own supplements because I was that sensitive. So that's it. That's the whole thing. Get yourself a grinder or a mortar and pestle. You need teaspoons, half teaspoon, maybe a quarter teaspoon, depending. You need to know that a tablespoon contains 3 teaspoons. That's very handy. You can look all that stuff up on the internet if you need to. You need a few containers and your supplements and your recipe, and that's it. So there you have it. I hope that's helpful. Enjoy eating those supplements.